Good afternoon. It's Roger Glenn with Poss Realty. I'm coming to you today from top of Straw Mountain, Laura and I's home in Persimmon, Georgia, which is just west of Clayton, of course, in Raven County. You guessed it. We're a little bit behind in our series, so we're catching up today. This is our 5th episode. We're going to do these over the course of a year. And today I want to talk about a really important concept regarding representation of real estate professionals. First, I should start by saying that it's important to remember that real estate laws vary by state. So the concept we're going to talk about today, which is dual agency, is actually something that is illegal in the state of Florida, but is absolutely legal in the state of Georgia. Nonetheless, I think it's important for consumers to understand this concept. Frankly, one of the reasons that I got into real estate after a career in the United States Army, in which the respect level in terms of credibility and professionalism is amongst the highest of any profession, into something that unfortunately does not share those same levels of public confidence, was to try to make a difference, to bring ethical character and discipline and commitment to the real estate business. Laura and I and our friends and family have had some experiences over the year that frankly made us feel like the industry could be improved. And so as it relates to dual agency, I want to talk about that a little bit today and help everybody understand what that term means and a couple associated terms, and then what is particularly important if you're buying or selling a home, frankly, and choosing the right real estate professional, whether it's the realtor, the individual agent, or the broker. So we'll jump right into it. Dual agency is essentially a generic concept that basically means that the real estate professional is representing both the buyer and the seller at the same time. It's a little bit different at the broker level because most brokers sit at sort of the secondary level in the transaction and exercise quality control and management over the agents. The agents work directly with buyers or sellers. But if you're in a situation in which you have one real estate agent who's working with a buyer and a seller, it's something called dual agency. In the state of Georgia, again, as I mentioned, it is legal. However, it must be specifically disclosed and agreed to by both the buyer and the seller. In the case of a brokerage, and this is pretty common, that has many agents or associate brokers that work for them, in which one agent of a brokerage is working with a buyer, one agent, a different agent, is working with a seller. It's what they call designated agency. And that's much less treacherous, if you will, as it relates for the potential for conflict of interest. But if you think about an individual agent, a Roger, or a team, a Roger and Laura, that is potentially working with both a buyer and a seller in the same transaction. If you just take a step back from that, you think conceptually, what are the fiduciary responsibilities of that agent or that team? What is the objective that they are trying to accomplish on behalf of their customer? Well, in the case of a seller, it's to sell at the highest possible price, to include appropriate considerations for the terms and any offers made, contingencies, things of that nature. And in the case of a buyer, it's to buy at the best possible value. So Laura and I have made a conscious decision, even though it is in fact legal in the state of Georgia to represent both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction, that we will not do that. We will not do that individually, and we will not do that as a team, because a term we used to use in military operation and risk assessment was it is fraught with risk. Even if it's not intentional, there are certain matters that could potentially provide leverage to the other party, that there's a potential for accidental disclosures of motives and bias in a transaction that represent, I believe, a conflict of interest. The other thing, frankly, you have to be mindful of no matter how convenient it might be to dismiss it, is appearances. When Laura and I work for a buyer or a seller, we want there to be absolutely no ambiguity as it relates to who we work for and what we are motivated by. In my opinion, that keeps it very clean. I won't get into matters as to whether or not I think that the state of Georgia should reconsider its position on dual agency in this video, but as you might infer, I believe that they should, especially if you want to keep the industry standards at a level that instills confidence in consumers. I think it's best to play it center line, as I like to say when it comes to those things. If you are not familiar with the concept of dual agency, in addition to this video, there are lots of great online resources that talk about dual agency and what it means, some of the risks. There are some that go as far as to say that there can potentially be some benefits. And frankly, I think those arguments are rather tenuous, but they're certainly entitled to their opinion. And so if you just do a simple Google for dual agency. Last thing that I would say is if you are buying or selling a home, this is a tremendously important transaction, regardless of whether it's an investment property or it's a personal property, if you will. And when it comes to selecting the appropriate agent and broker, I would suggest that you should ask about dual agency if it's legal in the state that you're in. The majority of our videos obviously are seen by people who are interested in Raven County, Georgia. And again, as I already mentioned, state laws vary. So in the state of Florida, it's illegal. So this is a moot point, if you will. But if you're in a state that allows dual agency, have a specific discussion about that with your broker and your agent before you ever get to the point that you might be consummating a representation agreement. However, in those representation agreements, whether it's for a seller, a listing agreement, or a buyer, a representation agreement, you will see these things referenced, and they will ask you to choose whether or not you'll permit dual agency as a for instance. That's the way the Georgia Association of Realtors form reads, and you have an option as it relates to that. So carefully think about this, because it's very important to have an agent working on your behalf and that you understand precisely who they represent and who their fiduciary responsibilities are in fact beholden to. If there are other topics that you're interested in talking about, please send us a request. We'd love to cover a particular topic or question. Otherwise, I hope you find these informative, maybe from time to time, slightly entertaining. I try to mix up the background and my silly hats to make it more fun. So without any further ado, we'll say so long for today, and we'll see you next time for episode 6. Have a great day.